Indian classical music, as we know today, is the result of a cultural synthesis of several musical traditions. It is akin to a meditative state that helps attain self-realization, and it is a form from where emanates all other musical forms. Its origins can be traced back to the Vedas.
Indian music, classical music, evolved music, has originated from the Vedic period, from the Samved.
प्राचीन म्यूजिक जिसे कहते हैं वो 1800 से 2600 साल पहले तक से उसकी गवाही मिलती है और उसके ग्रंथ हैं भरतनाट्य शास्त्र, भरतदेशी और संगीत रत्नाकर।
Hindustani music is one of the most vibrant forms of Indian classical music. It is distinct in character, identity, and has a soul that is inimitable. The swar, or a note, is the very soul of Hindustani classical music. Ancient texts encourage us to understand that swar, or the note, originated from the sounds of the world of nature.
Sound which can be used for making music may be called as swara.
7 स्वरों के मजमूए को सप्तक कहते हैं।
We have the 7 main swaras, sa re ga ma pa dha ni. Sa repeats, you see, so that 7 swaras are main. And we go ascending it, that's an octave, that means the whole thing is called an octave. Then we come for avroha, descending it. Shuddha octave is sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa, sa re da pa ma ga re sa.
स्वर इज लाइक सिक्स्थ एलिमेंट, यू नो, 5 तत्व कहते हैं, तो मुझे ऐसा लगता है आपकी स्वर एक कुछ छठा एलिमेंट है इस दुनिया में, यू नो, दैट इट हैज गॉट द सेम पावर व्हाट अर्थ हैज और व्हाट वाटर हैज और यू नो अग्नि हैज एंड ऑल दैट, यू नो, वायु। सो स्वर भी मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि स्वर भी एक बड़ा अजीब उसके अंदर सब कुछ समाया हुआ है। स्वर अपने आप में एक बहुत अलौकिक शक्ति है।
Notes come together in different ways to give birth to what we know as a rag. The myriad ways in which the notes combine gives us a number of rags, each distinct in character, each with its own enchanting personality.
राग एक स्ट्रक्चर है, उसको बांधा हुआ है। कुछ सुरों को जब हम बांध के एक माला बनाते हैं, वो माला जो बन के तैयार होती है उसको राग बोलते हैं।
Rag is a living entity. Rag is a design, it's a kaleidoscopic design.
I treat raga as a human being. It has a life, and each rag, it has all kind of moods when I'm performing or presenting, or anybody, any musician. It has sad movements and happy moments and all kind of. So it's a complete journey.
Rag, of course, has its own principles and factors, you know, which one has to abide by. Like, for example, the ascending and descending orders, the aroha, avroha, the nerve or energy centers of the rag, vadi and samvadi, then phraseology, which is swar sangati, then the form and shape of the rag, which is called rag swarup.
बहुत सारे रागों के इम्पॉर्टेंट नोट्स होते हैं और उसकी चालें होती हैं, है ना? उनको पकड़ बोलते हैं, वो उसमें लगाया जाता है तो उससे पता चलता है. जैसे मारवा और पुरिया को कैसे अलग करना है? द ने रे ने द म द ने रे ग रे ने द ग रे द ने रे द रे ने ग रे ग म द म ग रे द म ग रे ने द ने रे सा. अब रिखब पे वो पता चल रहा है मारवा है, दैवत रिखब लगाने से. अब वही स्केल है पुरिया, ग म द ग म ग रे रे सा नि रे ग म ग रे ग म द नि म द ग म ग द ग म द ग म ग नि रे सा. उसके चाल अलग हो गई. जब हम मारवा गा रहे हैं, रे और धा पे ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंस है उसका, तब मारवा है वो, और गंधार और निखात पे ज्यादा दिया तो वो पुरिया हो गया.
You know, it's a spontaneous creation. You cannot say it is a composition or compose. He's not composing actually, but it's improvising spontaneously.
While rags manifest a small moment of the wonder that is music, the different modes of singing further embellish and lend the presentation a delightful specificity, which is yet universal in its appeal today. The most commonly heard forms of Hindustani music are Dhrupad, Dhamar, Khayal and Thumri.
The Dhrupad was the first kind of form which came in raga music. In Dhrupad style, we have two main sections. One is alap and another one is the bandish. And the main emphasis of Dhrupad is that the thera. We have the second portion comes with the pakhavaj, that is bandish. And bandish has lyrics in it. It's the old form, and in olden period the bhakti was more. So there are a lot of composition dedicated to Lord Shiva, Rama, or goddess.
Dhrupad is considered the oldest of these forms, but over time it yielded place to Khayal, which remains to this day the defining gayaki of Hindustani music.
हज़रत अमीर खुसरो रहमतुल्लाह ने ख्याल की इजाद की. तो ख्याल का मतलब है ध्यान. अपना अपना ख्याल है, अपना अपना ध्यान है.
Khayal means imagination, means vistar, it means improvisation, means building up. So, on the basis of a thought, I build up, I explore.
It's got parts of every other form of singing, like Dhrupad, Dhamar, Thumri, Tappa. It's got very beautiful parts of there. So it's a beautiful mixture, synthesis of all the forms of singing.
ख्याल के 3-4 स्टेज होते हैं। जैसे हम शुरू में थोड़ा सा आलाप करते हैं, उसके बाद हम बड़ा ख्याल गाते हैं। बड़ा ख्याल ऐसा है कि वो स्लो टेम्पो होता है। अब ये बड़े ख्याल के बाद हम जाते हैं, उसमें फिर थोड़े तान, बेलावा, सरगम होता है, इम्प्रोवाइजेशन होता है। फिर उसको हम बढ़ते बढ़ते फिर हम या तो मध्य लय में आते हैं या द्रुत लय में आ जाते हैं। हम मध्य लय में आए, मध्य लय में बंदिश गाई, फिर द्रुत लय में आए और एक परफॉर्मेंस खत्म। जो हिंदुस्तानी म्यूजिक का ख्याल है वो कैसा होता है, जैसे उसके सब पार्ट्स ले लो आप, तो वो एक कुदरती जैसे निज़ाम होता है। जैसे सुबह में सूरज होता है, वो एक हल्की सी धूप निकलती है, वो आलाप हुआ, वो थोड़ा ऊपर आया, परवान चढ़ा, थोड़ी धूप बढ़ी, उसमें विस्तार हुआ, फिर एकदम ही वो ब्राइट हुआ तो थोड़ी सरगम है ना, सरगम ताने आए, और फिर वो सनसेट हुआ, वो खत्म हो गया तियामत।
Another beautiful style of singing or Gayan Shaili that Hindustani classical music nurtured is Thumri, a form that found its fullest flowering in the 19th and 20th centuries. It has traversed its own unique journey.
The word Thumri itself comes from Thumak ke rijhana. So, when you see this, immediately you have a clue as to what is the quality of this form. Ek to thumakna, to move gracefully, seductively, yes, and और ये ठुमक के फिर रिझाना. जब से शाम सिधार. In Thumri, particularly as we see it today and as we understand it today, we see the coming together of many aspects, many kinds of qualities, many kinds of shaili also. Certainly it draws from the notion of what is classical or marg sangeet. It certainly draws from that. And yet, there are interesting things about Thumri and the rag as it's used in Thumri, because it almost seems as if it's a rag in the making,
The concept of tal is crucial to Hindustani music and creates the ground on which all melodic ornamentations stand. Tal is the rhythmic structure that binds the different modes of singing.
The tal is something parallel to the raga, concept of raga. The tal has to do with rhythm. In India, the rhythm is always cyclic, and therefore we call it time cycle. A tal is called a time cycle. Because of it being a cycle, it also needs one particular identifying point, which is called the sum, and which holds the maximum musical energy at that point. Like teen tal, which is the most popular classical tal, widely used. It has 16 beats and equally divided into 4 parts. And the standard set of syllables known as theka is dha, dhin, dhin, dha, dha, dhin, dhin, dha, dha, tin, tin, ta, ta, dhin, dhin, da, da.
Many different kinds of rhythm and percussive instruments are used in Hindustani classical music. The tabla is most significant of them all. Used both as accompaniment and a solo instrument, it is integral to the Hindustani form.
Well, the tabla is indispensable to any form of a classical recital. In terms of the khayal or the vocal part of it, the tabla has a slightly more subtle role to play because it keeps the theka, it keeps a meter going, and it keeps an aesthetics moving along as well.
There will be subtle changes in the theka itself, in the tonal quality, depending on the various passages of a rendition, vocal or instrumental.
So it totally depends on the aesthetic sensibility of the tabla player, how the person is able to bring out the nuances of what the singer / the instrumentalist is producing at that moment.
Traditionally, Khyal musicians were considered members of a gharana or a musical family. Some of the gharanas are Delhi, Agra, Gwalior, Kirana, to name a few. Each gharana now over time has developed certain specific techniques and styles of singing.
Gharana, the word means family, but the name of the gharana always comes from the place where the founder of the gharana belonged.
I belong to the Jaipur Atrauli Khayal style of singing, and this gharana was named and brought into Maharashtra by Ustad Alladiya Khan Sahab. People have said that Jaipur Atrauli Gharana has a very balanced mix of the swara and the laya aspects.
रामपुर सेसवान घराने की तो काफ़ी खूबियाँ हैं और बहुत ज़्यादा कंट्रीब्यूशन है हिंदुस्तानी संगीत के क्षेत्र में. हमारे यहाँ जैसे वॉइस कल्चर पे बहुत ध्यान दिया जाता है.
जमुना के तट पे खोला तू घूंघट पट रस रंग पिया मोरी माँ में बतिया बैया पकुरते.
Farrukhabad is known to be a very romantic style of playing. It is known to have a lot of finger work. It also has predominance of the dhirket baj, and it is considered to be an offshoot of the Delhi Gharana.
Ustad Aman Ali Khan Sahab, he went to Mysore and learned Carnatic music, and then he amalgamated that rhythm side and the sargam side, gamak sargam, that he brought in his own rendition.
बनारस एकमात्र घराना है जिसमें ख्याल गायकी में आपको चारों अंग का फ्लेवर मिलेगा. उसको हम कहते हैं चारों पट का गाना. यानी ख्याल गायकी में ख्याल अंग भी मिलेगा, ध्रुपद अंग भी मिलेगा, ठुमरी अंग भी मिलेगा और टप्पा अंग भी मिलेगा.
Hindustani classical music is primarily an oral tradition, a coming together of precision and passion, woven with the commitment and sadhana of generations of practitioners, and nurtured by the age-old practice of the transmission of knowledge, known as the Guru Shishya Parampara. Musical knowledge is handed down sina basina, voice to voice, and heart to heart, from the master to the disciple.
See, this Guru Shish Parampara, this is the old saying that people, they used to live with the Guru and serve the Guru like a sevak, servant.
It is not just the art of music that the disciple internalizes. He internalizes the Guru's thought process, his whole life philosophy, how the Guru approaches a particular situation in life.
One doesn't need to necessarily live with the Guru. Today, these things are not possible because of the fast pace of life. But the bonding between a Guru and a Shishya is the crux of the whole parampara.
Fortunately, in Indian music field, I have found still Guru Shishya Parampara is surviving. They treat music like prayer.
Is there more to a performance than what we see on the stage? Is it just a culmination point for an artist, or is it a moment in the artist's endless journey? Is it a reassurance, a milestone on that journey, and a place that gives an artist the incentive to carry on?
I think one has to acknowledge that the audience are equally participants in a performance. You know, it doesn't happen but for them. They give you the energy, they are there with you, and they must be there with you.
There's a feeling of nervousness, feeling of expectation, wanting to do your best. And till you really start, for a minute or two, till that part, I always feel that as if it is the first time I'm playing for audience or anyone, you know.
I feel I'm connected to some cosmic power, and I'm receiving some messages, and which I'm just the messenger or via media I'm delivering to the audience.
Somewhere at the core of Hindustani classical music is the seed of spirituality, a state of centered calmness, a state that elevates the soul, that connects it with the divine. They say this music is about self-discovery. It is about drowning in an ocean of melody.
A musician spends years learning, practicing, assimilating, performing, thinking, researching, disseminating. After all this comes a stage when he goes beyond the obvious into a different realm, when the absolute purity of sound envelopes him, and he goes through an experience which can be termed as anubhuti.
You and music, there is nobody. There are moments where there is no feeling in my mind and in my body, you know. It becomes like it's like shunya ki sthiti jo hote na.
Sometimes you feel like you are nowhere. You forget yourself. Your sense and your thinking of music become very closely connected to some superpower.
It cannot be captured in one place or another. It can only be known if you drop the categories of your thought. If you stop trying to think that it's this rag, this emotion, that emotion, you know, to categorize them as neat. Somehow you have to see that the edges of them are open constantly to a kind of explosion of meaning, which you cannot even begin to grasp. You know, it can just go on endlessly. Yeah, I would say it is this uncertainty that is so liberating, that is so truly liberating, and that is the most deeply spiritual.
What is the road ahead for Hindustani classical music? Is purity of form enough to sustain audience's interest and a student's desire to learn it? Is it growing with time?
ग्रो तो हो ही रहा है, मतलब ग्रो तो हो ही रहा है, और ग्रो होने के साथ साथ जितना ग्रो होता है उतना ख़त्म भी होता है, क्योंकि जो 80 साल के लोग हैं, 90 साल के लोग हैं, जो म्यूज़िक करते थे या म्यूज़िक सुनने जाते थे, कॉन्सर्ट जाते थे, वो गुजर गए हैं, वो गुजर रहे हैं, तो कम भी हो रहा है और नए भी जुड़ रहे हैं.
There are tremendous performers coming up. There are people who are practicing really hard and who are doing brilliantly. The only thing is that the market has slightly diminished. But then the market even for the audio CD has diminished. Does that mean that music is going to end?
खत्म नहीं होगा, खत्म बिल्कुल नहीं होगा, क्योंकि जब तक राग और स्वर की शक्ति है तब तक ये खत्म नहीं होगा.
As our music is, the classical music that is, it has never stood still. In the hands of creative people, it has always added and being enriched. You see, we don't sing Vedic hymns or play the music of an 8th century, or not for that matter of 19th century even. So within the same framework of classical base, we go on adding new ideas. Not everybody, but those who are very creative. That's why music presented today by artists, in spite of having its roots for many centuries, what comes out can be also called as today's music. It doesn't become old and stale.